Ooh, that looks tasty. Welcome, folks. Today, the Hungry Gamer is back with another game review, and today we are talking about Revive from Porta Games, designed by Christian A. Otsby, Helge Meisner, Anna Wormland, and Elif Svensson, and I do apologize for mispronouncing those names. Now, before I begin, please make sure you turn your Klingon subtitles, because if I make any mistakes in the rules overview, that is where you will find the corrections. Now, what this game is it is a Euro game about kind of rebuilding the world after thousands of years where everyone has been living underground, after whatever man-made apocalypse that we created. And in that time, humanity has kind of evolved into these different races or factions, however you want to call it, and each one of them is slowly advancing out of the underground, which is here, spreading back out, rediscovering the world, and trying to kind of become the dominant faction in the world. And you're going to do that through a little bit of deck building, some action selection, and a little bit of tableau building along with the resource management. Now, if you are not interested in how the game is played, so we'll jump into my final thoughts, then you want to go to the timestamp on the screen right now. Now, there's actually two parts that I need to show you. The first one is the big board here, and then the second one is actually the player board, where a lot of stuff happens on the player board. And some of what I'm going to tell you now on this board won't make complete sense until you see the second part, so just please do understand that. Now what's going to be happening is, each turn, you're going to get to do two things. You can repeat the actions all you want. You can place one of your worker cards, and I'll show you that later, but basically that's going to give you some kind of resource. You can use your switch, which at the beginning of the game is simply going to give you a resource, though it becomes more interesting the further along through the game you go, and this is a good time to tell you that the game does come with a 5 or 6 game campaign where you get some story, and after each one you introduce more and more mechanics into the game. So by the end, the game is not hugely more complicated, but significantly more complicated than it was at the beginning. Then you're going to be able to explore some of these flipped over tiles here. You're going to be able to build structures, or you're going to be able to populate old cities. Or you're going to kind of refresh everything, and when you do that refresh, you're going to discard a bunch of cards, you're going to get some energy back, you're going to reset your switch, and you're going to move yourself up this track here, which will give you some kind of bonus. I'll also say that the bonuses on the board here, every time you cross it, whether it is by doing your hibernation, going up here, or just scoring points, every time you cross one, you're going to get whatever it may be it one of these little toolkits here, which I just threw. Each of them has something different that you can use and get on the back, or one of these artifacts here, and once all of these major artifacts here are gone, that's going to trigger the end of the game. And again, there are other ways to get those, and I'll get to that when we see the player boards. Now, as you're going through, you see here these numbers here. That's going to be points you're going to get for being the person to do the exploration. And the food here, that's costs that you need to actually explore the area. Everyone starts here in the middle, and to get to one of these spaces, you're going to have to take that action, as I mentioned. You've got to pay your resources. You're going to have to pay 1 food per hex to get there. So if I want to explore this from the middle, it costs me 1 food to get there, then 2 more to flip it over, and I'll get 1 point, and I'll get to take one of these cards and add it to my hand. That'll make sense in just a bit. Then I would flip it over, and it'd be my choice how I want to orient it. So just for kicks, I will say I will orient it just like that. Then one of the other things that you're able to do is you're able to build these houses here. And there are small houses, and there are big houses. And mechanically, they do almost the same thing, except for the big houses give you a double reward. And just like before, you have to pay the distance. Let's say I wanted to build right here. Then I would have to pay 1 food to get here, and then I would pay the cost in gears, which is on your player board, but for a small house it's 3 gears, for a large house it is 5 gears. And then it's going to allow you to advance on your machine track on everything around it. So once on the yellow, once on the green, and once on the gray. Again, that will make sense in just a little bit. And had I built a large house there, I would get 2 of each of those. There are other things that you can get by being next to them. You can get crystals, which are wild resources, or perhaps you can get these upgrade tokens, but you get the idea. The other thing, and I should point out, you can only build buildings on this desert sandy area. The other thing you can do is in the cities, or all the way at the edge of the board over here, these kind of in-game scoring spots, you can place a meeple. And it's going to cost you knowledge to do that, plus it'll cost you distance. So again, if I was here, it costs me 1 food to get through there, and then I'm there. And that's going to unlock some powers for you off your player board. And other players can come join you there, but they're going to have to give you a knowledge or a book just to come join you in that spot. And for the most part, that's what you're doing on this board right here. Now let's talk about the player boards, which is kind of where the most of the action happens. All right, and so here is the player board. And I mentioned that one of the things you can do is place your workers. And those are these cards here. I also mentioned that you can draft more into your hand. And you're going to start the game with 3 of these cards over in your discard where they are resting over here, kind of like their cryo sleep. And you'll have 3 in your hand. Though as the game goes, you'll wind up with more of them in your hand. And what you're going to do is you're going to choose either the top or the bottom being what it is that you want to activate. So if you take a top, you're going to slide it in up here on top, and you're going to get whatever this top effect is. In this case, 2 books. Or if you decide you want the bottom effect, you'll simply slide it in down on the bottom. And then you'd get this effect down here. It's also possible to unlock the side over here. And when you unlock the side, you get to choose which direction it's going to go in. Now, along with that, I mentioned there is a way to upgrade. And as you get upgrades, you're going to go to the market and you get a choice of these here. And what they're going to do is they're going to give you potential bonuses. So when you put them in there, if you put a matching color into that spot, in this case I put a green down here, not only would I get to use my power ability over here, and each one of those is different, I'm not going to go into how those work right now, but I would also get these bonuses here. In this case, a crystal, which is a wild resource, and a gear. And remember, the gears I mentioned earlier, you're going to need to use those to build things. The food over here, which perhaps I would get on something like this, is used to explore and to kind of travel further. And as I said, the crystals can be any of them. Now, I also mentioned that each of the factions has this special ability. All I'm going to say about that is when you use it, you will pull one of these off and place that over here. The same thing with all of these things in your machine, which I will show you in just a moment. As those come off the board, they're going to move over here and they're going to give you points and unlock things as you go up and down the board. Also over here, I said you can put the meeples out into the cities, and as you do that, each faction has their own set of specific bonuses that you're going to get for having put that specific meeple out onto the board. And again, I'm not going to go into what all of those do. Now, the last thing we need to talk about is this machine. I mentioned that as you're going up, every time you have one of these symbols here, it's going to allow you to advance the machine. And as you advance to these spots here, you will be unlocking parts of the machine. And in fact, the further and further you go, the more you'll unlock. And eventually, you'll actually be able to unlock these question mark spots, for which you're able to actually take these things here and slot one in, making your own machine that does specifically what you would like it to do. Additionally, you'll be able to unlock artifacts and so on and so on. But what's important about the machine here is that as you're going through and unlocking things, you're going to be able to do different things. And that's what this energy in the middle is for. And you're actually going to be able to get more of this energy as you go through the game. And what it's going to do is it's going to open up different opportunities. So based on what I've unlocked here, if I placed it here when I went and did an exploration, I could go one further space without paying for it. Or down here, I could spend 1 food to activate my faction special ability and thus get another one of those off the board. Right here, I'm allowed to actually explore at infinite range by putting 1 on here. And right here, I can actually build a house for 2 fewer gears. And each of these spots can take 1 energy on it. And you can get not unlimited energy through the game, but if you play your cards right, you can get quite a bit of energy to use a lot of this machine. And really, that's the bulk of how this game works. And as I said, you're going to play until all of these artifacts up here have been claimed, and then everyone's going to have equal turns, and then you're going to go ahead and you're going to score everything up that you've done, get your points for this, your points that you've been getting throughout the game, which are these blue points, and so on and so on. Whoever has the high score is going to win. So, what do I like about this game? The top of the list has to be just the overall mechanics. The way each round you have your choice of 2 different things that you can do, or I say 2 actions that you can do, and the several actions that you can actually choose to do, and you can repeat. The way the cards work and how where you're putting them in your little machine thing can combo with the upgrade you put on your machine. All of that, it's very, very satisfying because in general, it's actually pretty easy to get the resources that you want. And there's all kinds of different ways to do it. It also allows for you to kind of build up different engines of your own, depending on what cards that you're drafting into your hand and which cards you choose to use. And then, of course, which sides of the cards. All of that is very, very satisfying. It leaves you with a whole bunch of different choices, a bunch of different options, and it does always feel fresh and interesting, and I don't want to say exciting, because it is still resource management, but as far as resource management goes, exciting. And I think that works really, really well. I also enjoy kind of the way you spread out and explore the map. That little sense of exploration is good, even though you pretty much know what's going to be on the other side of each of them. There's not that many different things, but the way you're kind of expanding and building and placing things on the map, I think it works really, really well, especially the way at the four corners of the map, you have those kind of in-game scoring conditions that you, again, as you're building your stuff up, you're like, that's where I need to go to get some bonus points. All of that I just think is really very clever. Along with that, the way the kind of pullback turn goes, the hibernation step, where you're going to get something and all your things come back. And again, when you combine that with your actual machine where you're putting the energy out, and the way that often I find you kind of wait till the end and then boom, you start using all the energy and then you're going to get it all back. I just think that it's a very satisfying, very tight way of doing things that I think it works exceedingly, exceedingly well. The next thing that I like are the different factions. I think they are not drastically different. However, as you go through the game, the little campaign, and I'll talk about that again later, as you go through it, you start to unlock advanced modes for these different factions. You start to unlock special abilities for the different factions, and that to me is where the game starts to shine, because each of them has a power that it's not overpowered. It doesn't do what I like a lot of games do, when each class or character, whatever, has one ability that is just grossly broken and everyone's like, that's not fair, but everyone has something. It's not quite there, but they are very powerful abilities that if you lean into them, you can do some very, very cool things. And that is generally how I like asymmetric factions to go and to work. And then the last thing I'll say is there's a lot of times when you are kind of pulling stuff into your hand, be it cards, be it upgrades, be it pieces of the machine. And I like that there's always a market. I like that you always have choices. You're rarely, or actually I guess never, just kind of doing a random guess. I think that works well. And then there is a little bit of interaction to the point where if you go somewhere where someone already is, you're going to have to give them something. And if you kind of flip something over near where someone has a building, they're going to get something. So it kind of gives you a little bit of awareness of what the other player is doing. It's not fully multiplayer solitaire because you're trying to pay attention to where they are and what's going on, maybe beat them places, just so you don't have to share with them or give them things. So as someone who likes multiplayer solitaire, I think it is a nice little nudge towards a little bit of interaction in this Euro game. So what are my quibbles with the game? The first one is, and I know the publishers are going to hate me by now because I've said this so many times, the campaign story is nonsense. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Aporta Games. I like this game a lot. It was in my Games of the Year list. I like The Magnificent a lot. The story is nonsense. Now, maybe it's a translation thing. I don't know. It just is gobbledygook. It doesn't make sense. Beyond the fact that it slowly bleeds things into the game so you can kind of ease your way in. And I think that actually works quite well. But the story, it just makes me angry. But also, you can also just kind of not use it and just throw everything in. That's also an option. So not a huge deal, but just it promises campaign. You're not really getting it there. The next thing I'll say is it is a little bit fiddly, just with all the little tiles and you're flipping them and moving them around. And there's a whole bunch of pieces you have to put out before every game. Like everybody has to put out like 30, 40, 50 different things. And it is a little bit fiddly to kind of get stuff out. And then my only other quibble is the theme's there. But that's about it. This is like many Euro games. It's not a theme first, though in this case I wouldn't say it's a theme second or even theme third. If you really kind of stop and think about it, it's like, okay, yeah, I can see the board kind of has all icy over and we're finding places and it's melting and yeah, kind of, sort of, a little bit, but really it's not there, which in some ways is a bummer because the art on the cards and the character art is actually pretty cool. I actually like it and it's beautiful. I mean, the box cover, and if you flip the board over, it has kind of the box cover art on the back again. It's beautiful, looks beautiful, but you're not getting anything. But really, that's it. I think that this is a very good Euro game. A very, very good Euro game. And I mean, there's a reason that it wound up being my number 4, I think, game of the year last year when it just showed up. It's just mechanically spectacular. And if you're someone that's looking for, maybe not quite multiplayer solitaire, if you're looking for that kind of deck building, I hesitate to say deck building, but a little bit of deck building, resource management, tableau building, because you're kind of building up that machine, and you're looking for that kind of vibe, then you're going to be very hard-pressed to find a game better than this one at it. So there you have it, folks. That is Revive. I'm really high on this one. I think it's great. I really think it's great. Yes, I have some quibbles, but if you are a Eurogame fan and you're not trying to get a copy of this, then you are missing the boat right now. So if you found this video useful, please like, subscribe, share, maybe even join the channel membership program. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.